Room 237 needs coverage today. Can you handle high school chemistry? The voice on the phone sounded rushed, desperate. Another last-minute substitute request at Jefferson Ridge High School. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. She accepted without hesitation, gathered her worn leather messenger bag, and drove through the morning traffic toward the suburban campus. Students were already filtering through the main entrance when she arrived, backpacks slung over shoulders, phones glued to their faces. Completely absorbed in their teenage universe, the main office buzzed with typical morning chaos. Secretary Margaret Torres barely looked up from her computer screen as she handed over the substitute teaching packet. Room 237, third floor, East Wing. Mr. Davidson's lesson plans are on his desk. Chemistry periods 2 through 6. Good luck. She nodded politely, signed the visitor log with neat handwriting, and clipped the temporary ID badge to her conservative navy blazer. Sarah Mitchell, the name read, substitute teacher. The plastic badge felt lightweight against the fabric, almost insignificant. Walking through the crowded hallways, she moved with quiet purpose past clusters of students who paid her no attention whatsoever. Just another adult in their educational landscape, invisible and unremarkable. Her sensible black flats made no sound against the polished linoleum floors as she navigated toward the East Wing stairwell. Room 237 occupied a corner position on the third floor, offering an unobstructed view of both the student parking lot and the tree-lined residential street beyond the campus perimeter. Large windows stretched across two walls, flooding the space with natural morning light that illuminated rows of black-topped laboratory tables, equipped with Bunsen burners and chemical supply stations. She set her messenger bag beside the teacher's desk and began reviewing Mr. Davidson's meticulously organized lesson plans. Today's schedule included 5 periods of introductory chemistry, covering basic atomic structure and periodic table fundamentals. Standard curriculum for sophomore students. Nothing challenging or complex. The first period bell rang with electronic precision, and teenagers began filtering into the classroom with the casual indifference typical of high school students facing another day of required coursework. They dropped backpacks beside their assigned seats, pulled out notebooks and pens with minimal enthusiasm, and waited for instruction. Good morning, class. I'm Ms. Mitchell, your substitute teacher for today. Her voice carried easily across the room, professional and pleasant. Mr. Davidson has left detailed lesson plans, so we'll continue with your unit on atomic structure. A student in the back row raised his hand tentatively. Are you going to follow his seating chart? He's really strict about where we sit. Of course. Please remain in your assigned seats. She moved toward the windows while speaking, ostensibly to adjust the blinds for better lighting. Let's begin with attendance. She picked up the clipboard from the desk and began calling names in alphabetical order. Adams Jennifer, here. Bennett Marcus, present. Her eyes moved systematically between the attendance sheet and the windows, appearing to focus on matching faces with names while actually conducting a careful surveillance of the street below. A dark sedan had been parked across from the school entrance since her arrival, its occupants obscured by tinted glass. Collins Amanda, here. The vehicle hadn't moved in over an hour, unusual for a residential neighborhood where most cars belonged to residents who left for work during morning rush hour. Its position provided clear sightlines to both the main entrance and the emergency exits along the building's south wall. Davidson Timothy? Oh, that's interesting. Same last name as your regular teacher. Yeah, that's my dad. He's at some conference today. She continued through the roster, maintaining perfect teaching composure while tracking movement patterns in her peripheral vision. 2 figures had emerged from a house 3 blocks away, walking with a purposeful stride toward the school perimeter. Their pace suggested coordination rather than casual pedestrian traffic. Edwards, Sarah. Here. Franklin David. No response from the classroom. Franklin David? She repeated, scanning the faces before her. He's absent today, volunteered a girl in the front row. His mom called the office this morning. She made the appropriate notation while observing that the two pedestrians had separated, taking different routes that would converge near the athletic field behind the main building. Classic pincer movement, designed to create overlapping coverage of potential escape routes. Garcia, Maria. Present. The morning sun shifted position, casting new shadows across the parking lot and revealing additional details about the suspicious sedan. Missouri license plates, recent model, no visible damage or distinguishing features. Professional surveillance vehicle, chosen specifically for its unremarkable appearance. Harrison Kevin, here. Her training had taught her to recognize behavioral patterns that indicated coordinated surveillance operations. The timing of the pedestrian's movement, synchronized with the stationary vehicle's position, suggested advanced planning and professional execution. This wasn't random criminal activity or typical neighborhood disturbance. Jackson, Lisa, here. She reached the classroom's corner position near the windows, allowing her to maintain visual contact with both the street and the students without appearing distracted from her teaching responsibilities. The messenger bag beside the desk contained equipment that most substitute teachers would never carry, carefully concealed beneath textbooks and lesson planning materials. Martinez Robert. Present. A third figure had appeared near the bus loading zone, ostensibly waiting for public transportation, but positioned to observe vehicle traffic entering and leaving the campus. The coordination was becoming unmistakable. A surveillance net designed to monitor multiple access points simultaneously. Students began shifting restlessly in their seats, eager to move beyond attendance and begin the actual lesson. Chemistry. Textbooks opened with rustling pages, pencils appeared on desktop surfaces, and the normal classroom energy started building toward educational activity. Nelson, Patricia? Here. She completed the attendance process with professional efficiency, never allowing her expression to reflect the tactical assessment occurring behind her calm teaching demeanor. Years of training had taught her to compartmentalize operational awareness while maintaining perfect cover identity performance. The dark sedan's engine started, exhaust visible in the cool morning air. It pulled away from the curb, slowly, deliberately, replaced within minutes by a different vehicle that assumed the same surveillance position. Textbook rotation protocol, designed to prevent detection through extended static observation. All right, class, let's open our textbooks to page 47 and review yesterday's material on electron configuration. She moved back toward the teacher's desk, positioning herself where she could continue monitoring the windows while appearing completely focused on educational instruction. The students responded with typical teenage compliance, flipping through pages and preparing for another routine day of academic learning. None of them suspected that their substitute teacher was simultaneously tracking a sophisticated surveillance operation that threatened far more than their chemistry education. Can anyone tell me what happens when sodium meets water? Sarah Mitchell asked, moving toward the demonstration table at the front of the classroom while keeping the windows in her peripheral vision. Hands shot up across the room. It explodes, called out Marcus Bennett from the third row. Not exactly exploding, but yes, it creates a vigorous reaction. She began setting up the demonstration equipment, her movements precise and economical. We'll observe this safely using proper laboratory protocols. The replacement surveillance vehicle had repositioned itself twice in the past 15 minutes, each move bringing it closer to the school's main entrance. The pattern suggested escalation rather than routine monitoring. Whatever operation was unfolding, it was entering a more active phase. Timothy Davidson raised his hand. Ms. Mitchell, my dad usually uses the safety shield for this demonstration. Should I get it from the storage room? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Asterisk asterisk. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's very thoughtful, Timothy. Yes, please retrieve the safety equipment from the back storage area. As the student headed toward the rear of the classroom, she noticed movement in the faculty parking lot below. A maintenance van had arrived. But instead of heading toward the building's service entrance, it parked near the administrative wing where the main communication systems were housed. While Timothy gets our safety equipment, let's discuss the chemical properties that make this reaction so dramatic. She filled a large beaker with distilled water, her actions methodical and professional. Sodium is what we call a highly reactive alkali metal. The van's occupants weren't moving like typical maintenance workers. They remained in the vehicle, windows down, observing the building's exterior with systematic attention. Their behavior patterns matched the other surveillance elements she'd been tracking since arrival. Who can tell me why sodium reacts so violently with water? Amanda Collins raised her hand enthusiastically. Because it wants to give up its outer electron? Excellent. Sodium has one electron in its outer shell, making it extremely eager to achieve stability through electron transfer. Timothy returned with the protective shield, struggling slightly with its weight. This thing is heavier than it looks. Dad always makes it seem easy. Chemistry teachers develop strong arms over the years, she replied with a smile, helping him position the equipment properly. Now, everyone needs to put on safety goggles. This demonstration requires complete attention to proper procedures. Students began retrieving safety equipment from their lab stations, the classroom filling with the sounds of opening drawers and adjusting elastic straps. The routine activity provided perfect cover for her to move closer to the windows under the pretense of checking light conditions for the demonstration. The maintenance van's rear doors had opened. Two figures emerged carrying what appeared to be standard electrical equipment, but their movement pattern suggested tactical training rather than trade school education. They approached the building with coordinated spacing and constant environmental awareness. Are safety goggles secure? Excellent. Now observe what happens when I introduce this small piece of sodium to the water. She used metal tongs to hold a pea-sized chunk of sodium, allowing students to see the metallic surface clearly before the reaction began. Remember, we're observing electron transfer in real time. The sodium hit the water surface and immediately began dancing across the liquid, fizzing violently and producing bright flashes of light. Students leaned forward in fascination, completely absorbed by the dramatic chemical display. Notice how the sodium moves around the surface. Can anyone explain why it doesn't simply sink? The reaction creates gas bubbles that keep it floating. Called out Maria Garcia. Perfect observation. The hydrogen gas released during the reaction creates enough buoyancy to keep the sodium mobile. While students focused on the demonstration, she caught sight of a figure moving along the building's roofline. Professional insertion, approaching the ventilation systems that controlled air circulation throughout the entire facility. The coordination was becoming unmistakable, Miss Mitchell. Jennifer Adams raised her hand. How do they use this reaction? In real life, like outside of chemistry class? Sodium-water reactions have several practical applications. They're used in certain types of emergency equipment and specialized industrial processes. She disposed of the remaining materials safely while speaking. The rapid gas production can be quite useful when controlled properly. Her phone vibrated. Against her hip, text message. She glanced discreetly at the screen while appearing to check the time. Unknown number. Package delivery scheduled for 10:47 a.m. Signature required. 10:47 was in 12 minutes. Whatever operation was unfolding around Jefferson Ridge High School was moving toward execution. The coded message confirmed her worst suspicions about the surveillance pattern she'd been tracking. Let's clean up our demonstration materials and move on to our next topic. She began methodically storing the chemistry equipment, each movement calm and deliberate despite the tactical situation developing outside. Who can tell me about the periodic table organization we studied yesterday? Kevin Harrison raised his hand. Elements are arranged by atomic number, right? Like how many protons they have. Exactly right. The periodic table reflects the fundamental structure of matter itself. The maintenance van had moved to a new position near the gymnasium, while the rooftop figure had disappeared from view. Standard infiltration protocol, establishing multiple access points before initiating primary objective. Her years of experience recognized the pattern immediately. Ms. Mitchell? Lisa Jackson looked concerned. Is everything okay? You seem kind of distracted. Just making sure we follow all safety protocols properly. Chemistry requires constant attention to detail. She moved back toward the demonstration table, positioning herself where she could maintain visual contact with multiple sight lines. Let's review electron shells and how they determine chemical behavior. Students began taking notes as she wrote. On the whiteboard, their attention focused on academic content, while she continued tracking the tactical situation through peripheral awareness. The training that had kept her alive through multiple overseas deployments was now protecting an entire school full of teenagers who had no idea. Their substitute teacher was their first line of defense. Her messenger bag contained more than textbooks and lesson plans, communications equipment, emergency protocols, and resources that could coordinate response to whatever threat was converging on their location. But activation would require compromising her cover identity, potentially escalating a situation that might still be contained through covert response. The arrangement of electrons determines not just chemical properties, but physical characteristics as well. She continued teaching while mentally calculating response options and tactical alternatives. Understanding electron behavior helps U.S. predict how elements will interact in various situations. Patricia Nelson raised her hand. Will this be on our test next week? I'm sure Mr. Davidson will review all relevant material when he returns tomorrow. She glanced at the clock above the door. 10:39 a.m., 8 minutes until the coded deadline. The decision would have to be made soon. Continue maintaining cover and hope the threat assessment was incorrect, or reveal her true capabilities and take active measures to protect the students who trusted her. To teach them chemistry. The classroom fell into focused silence as students worked through practice problems, completely unaware that their morning was about to change in ways they could never imagine. 10:46 a.m., 1 minute until the coded deadline. Sarah Mitchell closed her textbook with deliberate calm and walked toward her messenger bag. Class, I need you to continue working on problems 15 through 20. Complete silence, please. Students bent over their worksheets, pencils scratching against paper in the quiet concentration typical of focused academic work. They had no idea their substitute teacher was reaching into her bag, not for additional lesson materials, but for an encrypted communication device that would connect her directly to federal emergency response networks. The device powered on silently, its screen displaying tactical information that had been gathering since her arrival at Jefferson Ridge High School. Surveillance confirmations, threat assessments, and coordination protocols scrolled past in rapid succession. Her suspicions had been correct. This wasn't a drill. 10:47 a.m. arrived with electronic precision. The fire alarm system suddenly activated. Throughout the entire building, its piercing electronic wail echoing through corridors and classrooms. But this wasn't the scheduled monthly safety drill listed on the administrative calendar. The pattern was wrong. The timing was wrong. and the duration sequence didn't match standard emergency protocols. Students looked up from their worksheets. In confusion. "Is this a fire drill?" asked Timothy Davidson. "Dad didn't mention anything about one today." "Everyone remain seated," Sarah instructed, her voice carrying an authority that made students freeze immediately. Something in her tone had changed, transformed from pleasant substitute teacher to someone accustomed to being obeyed without question during crisis situations. She moved swiftly to the classroom door and engaged the security lock, a precaution that would confuse students but potentially save their lives. "Marcus, please close all the window blinds completely." "Amanda, turn off the classroom lights." "Ms. Mitchell, what's happening?" Jennifer Adams asked, her voice rising with concern. "Follow my instructions exactly. No questions right now." The encrypted device in her hand began receiving real-time updates from multiple federal agencies. The maintenance van had deployed electronic jamming equipment designed to disrupt local communications. The rooftop infiltrator had accessed the school's ventilation system and introduced an unknown aerosol agent. The surveillance vehicles contained armed personnel preparing for coordinated entry. This was a hostage situation in development, with Jefferson Ridge High School as the primary target. Her cover identity was about to be completely blown, but protecting these students took priority over maintaining operational security. She activated emergency protocols that would alert every relevant federal agency within a 50-mile radius. "Everyone, move away from the windows and sit on the floor against the interior wall," she commanded, her voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of someone trained in crisis management. "Do it now." Students responded with immediate compliance there. Teenage indifference replaced by growing awareness that something serious was unfolding. They clustered together against the wall opposite the windows, eyes wide with confusion and mounting fear. Sarah's messenger bag opened to reveal equipment that no substitute teacher would ever carry. Communications gear, tactical assessment tools, and emergency supplies organized with military precision. She pulled out a specialized radio that connected directly to federal emergency response frequencies. "Control, this is Phoenix 7. Code Black situation at Jefferson Ridge High School. Multiple hostile elements confirmed. Requesting immediate tactical response and building evacuation coordination." The voice that responded was crisp and professional. "Phoenix 7 confirmed. Tactical teams deploying to your location. Maintain position and protect civilians. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Students stared in stunned silence as their substitute teacher transformed before their eyes. The mild-mannered woman who had been teaching them chemistry was speaking in code names and tactical terminology, coordinating with federal agencies as if she'd been doing it her entire career. "Ms. Mitchell," whispered Kevin Harrison, "who are you really?" She turned toward the class while maintaining radio contact, her expression serious but reassuring. "Someone whose job is to keep you safe. That's all you need to know right now." The encrypted device showed new tactical information. Armed personnel had entered the building through multiple access points, moving with coordinated precision toward predetermined objectives. The aerosol agent introduced through the ventilation system was designed to incapacitate rather than kill, suggesting the intention was to capture rather than eliminate. "Control, hostile forces have breached the building. Unknown chemical agent deployed through VECA systems. Civilian population at immediate risk. Phoenix 7, emergency ventilation shutdown is in progress. Hazmat teams are en route. Maintain classroom integrity until the extraction team reaches your position." She moved efficiently around the room, sealing air vents with emergency tape from her messenger bag and creating an improvised safe zone within the classroom. Years of training in hostile environment survival were being applied to protect a group of sophomore chemistry students who thought they were going to spend the morning about electron shells. "Timothy," she called out, "your father's Emergency supply cabinet. Where does he keep it? Behind his desk, the locked gray cabinet. But I don't know the combination. I do. She moved to the cabinet and entered a sequence that opened it immediately, revealing emergency medical supplies and communication, backup equipment that most high school teachers would never have access to. Students watched in amazement as she distributed emergency breathing masks and activated chemical detection equipment that had been concealed within standard educational supplies. Their chemistry classroom had been prepared for exactly this type of situation. With Mr. Davidson's full knowledge and cooperation, "Are we going to be okay?" asked Maria Garcia, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, but only if you follow my instructions exactly and trust that I know what I'm doing." The radio crackled with updates. Phoenix 7, tactical teams have engaged hostile forces on the first floor. Building evacuation is compromised. You are authorized to maintain a defensive position until extraction is possible. She looked at the frightened faces clustered against the wall and made a decision that would reveal more about her true identity than any amount of questioning could accomplish. Opening a concealed compartment in her messenger bag, she retrieved a sidearm and tactical equipment that transformed her from substitute teacher to federal agent in seconds. "My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I work for an agency that protects people from threats they never see coming. Today, you're seeing one of those threats. But you're also seeing why people like me exist." The revelation hit the students like a physical impact. Their substitute teacher wasn't just trained in crisis response. She was a federal agent whose presence at their school wasn't coincidental. She had been positioned there specifically because intelligence indicated Jefferson Ridge High School was a target. "Are you like FBI or something?" asked Amanda Collins. "Something like that. And right now, that something is keeping all of you alive." The transformation was complete. Sarah Mitchell, substitute teacher, had revealed herself as a federal agent, whose morning chemistry lesson had been covered for a protection operation that was about to save their lives, while emergency ventilation systems cycled fresh air through the sealed classroom and federal tactical teams coordinated their response through her radio. Sarah Mitchell's students sat in stunned silence, processing the reality that their substitute chemistry teacher was actually a federal agent. The questions burning in their eyes demanded answers, but the full truth was more complex than any of them could imagine. "How long have you been watching our school?" Timothy Davidson asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah checked her tactical display before responding, ensuring the immediate threat remained contained on lower floors. 3 months. Since intelligence indicated Jefferson Ridge High School was being targeted by a domestic terrorist organization called the New Republic Coalition. The name meant nothing to the students, but within federal law enforcement circles, the New Republic Coalition represented one of the most sophisticated domestic threats to emerge in recent years. Unlike traditional extremist groups that operated through crude violence and amateur planning, the NRC recruited former military personnel, intelligence operatives, and technical specialists who brought professional capabilities to their ideological agenda. Agent Mitchell. She had been designated within the Department of Homeland Security's Special Activities Division, a classified unit that specialized in deep cover operations within civilian populations. Her background made her uniquely qualified for educational environment infiltration. Before joining federal service, she had spent 4 years as an actual high school chemistry teacher in rural Montana, developing genuine expertise in classroom management and curriculum delivery. The Montana teaching experience hadn't been preparation for undercover work. It had been her life before everything changed during what became known as the Bitterroot Valley Incident. A domestic terrorist attack on her previous school had resulted in 17 casualties, including 6 students from her advanced chemistry classes. Sarah had been off campus during the attack, attending a professional development conference, helpless while her students faced violence she couldn't prevent. The guilt and determination that followed had driven her to federal service, where her unique combination of teaching experience and tactical aptitude made her invaluable for educational protection operations. She underwent 18 months of intensive training at classified facilities, learning surveillance techniques, crisis response protocols, and deep cover methodologies that would allow her to blend seamlessly into civilian educational environments. "The people attacking our school," asked Lisa Jackson. "Why do they want to hurt us?" The New Republic Coalition targets educational institutions because they view schools as symbols of what they call federal indoctrination. They believe the American education system is being used to undermine traditional values and promote government control over individual thinking. The ideology was more dangerous than simple anti-government sentiment. NRC leadership included former Department of Defense contractors who possessed insider knowledge of federal security protocols, former educators who understood school vulnerability patterns, and technical specialists capable of sophisticated cyber warfare and chemical weapons deployment. Sarah's current assignment had begun 6 months earlier when NSA signal intelligence detected communication patterns suggesting the NRC was planning a major operation against a suburban educational target. The communications mentioned Jefferson Ridge specifically, along with references to chemical demonstration and maximum psychological impact. "Your regular teacher, Mr. Davidson, is also involved in this operation," she continued, watching Timothy's face carefully. "He's not actually at a chemistry conference. He's at a secure federal facility, helping us understand exactly how the NRC planned to use his classroom for their attack." Timothy's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "My dad is working with you guys?" "Your father contacted federal authorities 2 months ago when he noticed unusual interest in his chemistry laboratory. Someone had been asking detailed questions about his chemical storage procedures, his demonstration materials, and his classroom security protocols. He realized his chemistry lab was being targeted for something more dangerous than education." The revelation explained why Mr. Davidson's emergency cabinet had contained federal communication equipment, and why Sarah had known the access codes. His cooperation with federal authorities had been essential for establishing the protective operation that was currently saving his son's life. Sarah's radio crackled with tactical updates. "Phoenix 7, hostile forces have been neutralized. On floors 1 and 2, chemical containment is in progress. Maintain position until full building clearance is confirmed." "Understood, Control. Civilian protection remains priority 1. She returned her attention to the students while monitoring the tactical display. The NRC's plan involved replacing Mr. Davidson with one of their operatives who would conduct a chemistry demonstration using materials that would release toxic gas throughout the building's ventilation system. They intended to take the entire school hostage while broadcasting their political message to national media. The sophistication of the plot reflected months of careful planning. NRC operatives had conducted surveillance of Jefferson Ridge High School, mapping security protocols, identifying key personnel, and developing detailed knowledge of the building's infrastructure. They had infiltrated the substitute teaching system to gain access credentials and had coordinated with sympathizers in local government to disable certain emergency response protocols. "But you stopped them," said Maria Garcia, her voice filled with hope. "We prevented their primary objective, but this operation represents something larger than a single school attack. The NRC has been planning coordinated strikes against multiple educational targets across the region. Jefferson Ridge was intended to be their demonstration of capability before launching a broader campaign. Sarah's involvement in this protection operation stemmed from her specialized knowledge of both educational environments and domestic terrorist methodology. Her previous experience with the Bitterroot Valley attack had made her one of the federal government's leading experts on school-targeted violence, while her teaching background allowed her to maintain authentic cover for extended periods. The federal response you're witnessing today represents coordination between multiple agencies, she explained while monitoring communication frequencies. FBI Domestic Terrorism Units, DHS Special Operations, ATF Chemical Weapons Specialists, and NSA Intelligence Analysis all contributed to identifying and stopping this threat. The students listened with growing awareness that their small suburban high school had become the center of a major federal counterterrorism operation. Their chemistry classroom, which they had considered just another academic requirement, had been transformed into a tactical command center, protecting them from dangers they never suspected existed. "Agent Mitchell," asked Kevin Harrison, "what happens to us now? I mean, after today?" "You go back to being normal high school students, with the knowledge that people you'll never meet work every day to keep you safe from threats you'll never see." She checked the tactical display again. "But you'll also understand that security isn't something that just happens. It requires constant vigilance and coordination between citizens and law enforcement." Her encrypted device displayed a new message from Federal Command. The NRC cell responsible for the Jefferson Ridge attack had been completely apprehended, their chemical weapons neutralized, and their communication networks compromised. Additional arrests were being made simultaneously at locations across 3 states, rolling up the entire regional network that had threatened multiple schools. "The operation you've witnessed today will prevent attacks on dozens of other schools," Sarah continued. "Every piece of intelligence gathered here will help protect students in communities you'll never visit, taught by teachers whose names you'll never know." The full scope of Sarah Mitchell's federal service extended far beyond the current operation. Over the past 3 years, she had conducted protective operations at 17 different educational institutions, preventing attacks that would have resulted in hundreds of casualties. Her success rate had made her the Department of Homeland Security's most effective deep-cover education specialist, but the personal cost of constant vigilance, perpetual deception, and professional isolation had been enormous. Living multiple identities, maintaining covert relationships with people she was protecting, without being able to reveal her true purpose, and carrying the responsibility for lives that depended on her performance, had created psychological pressures that few people could endure indefinitely. "Will we see you again?" asked Amanda Collins. Sarah looked at the faces of students who had trusted her with their safety, who had followed her instructions without question when their lives depended on immediate compliance. "Probably not. My job requires moving to the next place where people need protection." The radio confirmed that building clearance was complete and evacuation could proceed safely. Their time together in the improvised safe zone was ending, but the impact of what they had experienced would influence how these students understood security, education, and the hidden complexities of safety for the rest of their lives. The evacuation of Jefferson Ridge High School proceeded with precision that reflected months of federal planning. Students emerged from classrooms in orderly lines, guided by tactical personnel who had replaced their regular teachers and administrators. Parents gathered behind security perimeters, their faces displaying the shock of discovering their children's mourning had involved a major counter-terrorism operation that Timothy Davidson spotted his father among the federal personnel coordinating. The evacuation process. Mr. Davidson wasn't wearing his typical teacher attire. Instead, he wore the tactical gear of someone who had been working closely with law enforcement for months, his chemistry expertise having proved essential for understanding and countering the NRC's planned attack. "Dad?" Timothy called out as he reached the designated safe zone. "I'm sorry you had to learn about this the way you did," Mr. Davidson replied, embracing his son. "But Agent Mitchell kept you safe when I couldn't be there." The reunion highlighted the personal sacrifices that counter-terrorism operations demanded from everyone involved. Families whose lives had been disrupted by security requirements they couldn't discuss. Educators who had maintained dual identities to protect their students. And federal agents who had sacrificed normal relationships to maintain operational security. Principal Rebecca Torres emerged from the administrative building, her expression reflecting the overwhelming reality of discovering her school had been the target of a sophisticated terrorist plot. In 23 years of education administration, I never imagined something like this could happen here. The FBI special agent in charge, Commander James Richardson, addressed the assembled parents and media representatives who had gathered outside the security perimeter. The threat to Jefferson Ridge High School has been completely neutralized. No students or faculty were harmed during this operation, but the impact extended far beyond immediate physical safety. The psychological effects of learning their routine Tuesday morning had involved federal agents, domestic terrorists, and chemical weapons would influence these students for years to come. Counseling services were being established to help them process experiences that most adults would find traumatic. The 5 students from room 237 will receive specialized support, announced Dr. Patricia Wells, a federal psychologist who specialized in civilian exposure to national security operations. They witnessed the complete transformation of a trusted authority figure and participated in an active federal response to domestic terrorism. Marcus Bennett approached his parents with questions they had no framework for answering. "Mom, our substitute teacher had guns and radios and was talking to the FBI. She said people were trying to hurt us with chemistry stuff." The conversation reflected thousands of similar discussions occurring throughout the community as families struggled to explain events that challenged their fundamental assumptions about safety, education, and the hidden complexities of national security in suburban America. Local law enforcement faced their own crisis of understanding. Sheriff David Coleman had been briefed on federal operations in his jurisdiction, but the scope and sophistication of the threat had exceeded anything his department was prepared to handle independently. "We received assistance from agencies I didn't even know existed," he admitted during the emergency briefing with county officials. The level of planning required to prevent this attack involved resources and expertise that took months to coordinate. The regional impact was equally significant. School districts across the Tri-County area immediately implemented enhanced security protocols based on intelligence gathered during the Jefferson Ridge operation. Federal authorities shared threat assessment information that revealed the NRC had conducted surveillance of multiple educational targets. Superintendent Margaret Foster called an emergency meeting of all area principals. "We're learning that what happened at Jefferson Ridge was part of a larger plan that could have affected any of our schools. Every district needs to evaluate their vulnerability to similar attacks." The revelation that domestic terrorist organizations possess the capability to conduct such sophisticated operations against educational targets prompted congressional hearings on school security infrastructure. Agent Mitchell's successful operation raises questions about information sharing between federal and local agencies, testified Congressman Robert Hayes during emergency oversight hearings. Communities need to understand when their schools are being targeted by domestic terrorists. The federal response involved reassessing security protocols at educational institutions nationwide. The Department of Homeland Security established new guidelines for threat assessment and federal-local coordination that reflected lessons learned from the Jefferson Ridge operation. Media coverage of the incident focused national attention on the growing sophistication of domestic terrorist organizations and the federal government's capacity to conduct long-term deep cover operations within civilian populations. Sarah Mitchell's identity remained classified, but her successful protection of students became a case study in effective counterterrorism methodology. The New Republic Coalition's planned attack had intended to demonstrate their capability and recruit additional members through displays of power against government institutions. Instead, Their comprehensive defeat by federal authorities resulted in the arrest of over 40 operatives across 7 states and the disruption of planned attacks on 12 additional schools. The intelligence gathered during this operation prevented casualties that could have numbered in the hundreds, announced FBI Director Catherine Moore during a classified briefing to congressional leadership. Agent Mitchell's work represents the gold standard for protective operations in civilian environments. But the personal cost to Sarah Mitchell was becoming apparent to her supervisors. 3 years of continuous deep cover assignments had created psychological strain that was affecting her operational effectiveness. The emotional weight of protecting people who could never know her true identity had created isolation that was unsustainable for long-term service. She needs rotation to a different type of assignment, recommended Dr. Michael Stevens, the federal psychologist who monitored agents working in extended deep cover operations. The success of her educational protection work has made her invaluable, but she's approaching psychological limits that could compromise future operations. The students from room 237 began meeting weekly with specialized counselors who helped them process their experience while maintaining operational security. About details that remained classified. Their understanding of the incident would be carefully managed to protect ongoing federal operations while providing them with the support they needed. These kids saw something most adults never experience, explained Dr. Wells. They witnessed the hidden infrastructure that protects them every day, and they participated in preventing a major terrorist attack. That knowledge will change how they see the world forever. The transformation of Jefferson Ridge High School from target to symbol of successful federal protection represented a turning point in domestic counterterrorism strategy. Educational institutions across the country began implementing security measures based on the protocols that had saved lives during the NRC operation. 6 months later, enrollment at Jefferson Ridge High School had actually increased as families moved to the district, specifically because of its proven security infrastructure and federal attention. The school that had been targeted for destruction had become a symbol of effective protection and community resilience. But for Sarah Mitchell, the success of the operation marked the end of her career in educational protection. The psychological toll of constant deception and the emotional bonds formed with people she was protecting had created complications that made continued service in similar operations impossible. Her next assignment would take her away from classrooms and students toward different challenges that required her unique skills but offered the possibility of relationships based on truth rather than operational necessity. 5 years after the Jefferson Ridge operation, the impact of Sarah Mitchell's work continued, reshaping how America protected its educational institutions and understood the hidden guardians who moved among ordinary citizens. The students who had sat in room 237 that Tuesday morning were now college freshmen, their perspectives on security, service, and the complexity of safety forever altered by witnessing federal protection in action. Timothy Davidson enrolled at Georgetown University to study international security, his career path directly influenced by watching his chemistry classroom transform into a federal command center. That day taught me that protection happens through preparation, not reaction, he explained during his admissions essay. I want to be part of the system that keeps people safe from threats they never see coming. His father, Michael Davidson, had transitioned from high school chemistry teacher to federal consultant, helping design security protocols for educational institutions nationwide. His unique perspective as both educator and federal collaborator made him invaluable for bridging the gap between academic environments and national security requirements. Teachers need to understand that they're not just educators anymore. He addressed a national conference of chemistry instructors. We're potential first responders in scenarios we never imagined when we chose this profession. The question isn't whether threats exist, but whether we're prepared to recognize and respond to them. The Jefferson Ridge model became the template for educational protection nationwide. Federal agencies established the School Guardian Program, placing deep cover agents in educational environments where intelligence indicated potential terrorist interest. The program operated across 43 states, with agents maintaining teaching positions while conducting surveillance and threat assessment. Agent Sarah Mitchell had become the program's primary training instructor, though her identity remained classified even within federal circles. Her experience in educational protection was considered so valuable that she was assigned to develop a curriculum for agents preparing for similar deep cover operations. The psychological requirements for educational protection exceed normal undercover work, she explained to a classified gathering of federal trainers. Agents must maintain genuine care for the people they're protecting, while remaining operationally detached enough to make life or death decisions without emotional compromise. The training facility established at Quantico included a complete replica of Jefferson Ridge High School, where new agents practiced maintaining cover while conducting surveillance and emergency response. The chemistry classroom where Sarah had revealed her true identity became a teaching laboratory for federal agents, learning to balance protection with operational security. Marcus Bennett pursued journalism at Northwestern University, his career motivated by understanding how federal operations remained hidden from public awareness. Most people have no idea how much coordination happens behind the scenes to keep them safe, he wrote in his investigative piece about domestic counterterrorism. The substitute teacher who saved my life represents thousands of people working jobs that aren't what they appear to be. His investigation revealed that the School Guardian Program had prevented 17 confirmed terrorist attacks on educational institutions over the past 5 years, saving an estimated 3,400 potential casualties. The success rate reflected improvements in intelligence gathering, agent training, and federal-local coordination that emerged from lessons learned during the Jefferson Ridge operation. Congressional oversight of the program expanded significantly after successful operations began receiving limited public acknowledgement. Representative Patricia Williams, chair of the House Subcommittee on Domestic Security, championed legislation that formalized federal authority for educational protection operations. The School Guardian Program represents the evolution of Homeland Security from reactive to proactive, she argued during legislative hearings. Instead of responding to attacks after they occur, we're preventing them through strategic placement of trained personnel in vulnerable environments. The legislation faced opposition from privacy advocates who argued that federal agents conducting surveillance in educational environments violated constitutional protections. The debate reflected broader tensions between security requirements and civil liberties that had intensified since domestic terrorism threats became more sophisticated. Placing federal agents in classrooms without community knowledge creates the potential for abuse, argued Civil Liberties Union attorney David Chun. Students and parents have the right to know when their educational environment includes federal surveillance operations. The compromise legislation required communities to be notified when federal agents were placed in their schools, but allowed operational details to remain classified. Local school boards gained oversight authority while federal agencies maintained operational security for ongoing protection efforts. Amanda Collins became a federal agent herself, inspired by witnessing Sarah Mitchell's transformation from teacher to protector. Her recruitment into the Department of Homeland Security reflected the program's success in demonstrating career possibilities that students had never previously considered. Seeing Agent Mitchell protect us while maintaining her cover showed me that service could take forms I never imagined, she explained during her Federal Academy graduation ceremony. She proved that the most effective protection often happens through people who seem completely ordinary. The ripple effects extended into teacher training programs nationwide. Education schools began incorporating basic security awareness into their curriculum, preparing future educators to recognize potential threats and coordinate with law enforcement when necessary. Professor Linda Martinez at Teachers College, Columbia University, developed the course Educational Security in the 21st Century, based directly on lessons learned from the Jefferson Ridge operation. Teachers need understanding of their role in the broader security infrastructure, she explained. Not to become federal agents, but to recognize when their expertise can contribute to protection efforts. The New Republic Coalition's defeat at Jefferson Ridge had eliminated their capacity for large-scale operations, but smaller cells continued attempting attacks on educational targets. The intelligence networks developed during Sarah Mitchell's operation provided early warning systems that prevented these attempts from reaching operational stages. The success of the School Guardian program has forced domestic terrorist organizations to abandon educational targets as too well protected, reported FBI Director Catherine Moore during annual congressional briefings. They shifted toward softer targets that lack the same level of federal protection. International interest in the School Guardian program led to consultation agreements with allied nations facing similar domestic terrorism challenges. Sarah Mitchell's expertise became valuable for training foreign agents preparing for educational protection operations in their own countries. The American model of deep cover educational protection represents innovative thinking about civilian security, acknowledged Director Hans Müller of the German Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. Our cooperation with Agent Mitchell's program has improved our own capacity to protect educational institutions from domestic extremism. The psychological research conducted on students who experienced federal protection operations revealed long-term positive effects on their understanding of civic responsibility and career service. Follow-up studies showed significantly higher rates of public service career choices among students who had witnessed federal protection firsthand. Dr. Patricia Wells published her longitudinal study of the Jefferson Ridge students in the Journal of Applied Psychology. Exposure to effective federal protection during adolescence creates lasting appreciation for the complexity of security and the importance of service-oriented careers. Her research concluded. Kevin Harrison entered the Air Force Academy, his military service directly motivated by understanding the coordination required for successful protection operations. That day in chemistry class showed me that security depends on people willing to serve in ways that most citizens never see or understand, he explained during his academy interview, the classroom where Sarah Mitchell had taught chemistry while tracking terrorist surveillance became a permanent memorial to effective federal protection. A plaque installed discreetly near the teacher's desk read, "In recognition of the dedicated professionals who protect American education through service that remains largely unseen and unacknowledged." Students who studied in room 237 learned they were part of continuing history, their education protected by federal agents whose identities they would never know. The legacy of Sarah Mitchell's operation was measured not in public recognition or media coverage, but in the safety of students who remained unaware of threats that had been prevented. 10 years after Jefferson Ridge, Sarah Mitchell received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in a classified ceremony attended only by federal officials who understood her contributions to national security. Her identity remained protected, but her influence on domestic counterterrorism had become foundational to American educational security. Agent Mitchell represents the finest traditions of federal service, President Harrison declared during the private ceremony. Her work has saved lives that will never know her name, protected communities that will never understand the threats she prevented, and established security protocols that will protect future generations of American students. The substitute teacher who had taught chemistry while tracking enemy movement had become a symbol of service that transcended recognition, protection that operated through anonymity, and dedication that measured success in lives saved rather than credit received. Her legacy lived in every prevented attack, every protected school, and every student who pursued service careers because they had witnessed true dedication in action. The door she had held for others became a gateway to understanding that the most important protection often came from the most unexpected sources. In schools across America, federal agents continued their quiet vigilance, teaching lessons while watching for threats, protecting students who would never know their true identity. The work continued because Sarah Mitchell had proven it was possible to serve through deception, protect through anonymity, and save lives through dedication that asked nothing in return except the safety of those they swore to defend. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload. From us,